If you're a foreigner living in the Philippines or you're thinking about moving here and you're in the market for a loan, this video is going to be for you. Now, myself, I inquired about a signature loan at my bank here, and the bank manager explained to me why I wouldn't qualify. Even though I would have no problem repaying the loan, it's not because I'm a foreigner, it's because I'm a foreigner and I'm not married to a Filipina. He also said that the bank he used to work at has the same policy. So I decided to research banks and other lending institutions who will loan money to foreigners who are not married to a Philippine citizen. I learned some very interesting things. But before getting started, please subscribe to my channel, share this video, and don't forget that bell notification. All right, we're going to get into this topic. If you're a foreigner living in the Philippines and you're not married to a Filipina, can you actually walk into a Philippine bank and borrow money? Well, the short answer is yes, sometimes. But there's an important distinction between being legally eligible to apply for a loan and actually being approved for one. And being married to a Filipina is not necessarily the deciding factor. What matters much more is your residency status, your income, your age, your credit history, how long you've been living in the Philippines, and whether the lender believes they can collect the money if you stop paying. So let's look at what's realistically available to a foreigner living in the Philippines. First, let's talk about one of the more interesting examples, BDO Unibank. BDO's current personal loan qualifications specifically say that an applicant can be a Filipino citizen or a foreigner who is a resident of the Philippines. The bank also requires a minimum gross fixed monthly income of 15,000 pesos for salaried employees or 35,000 for self-employed professionals, and generally requires regular employment or a business operating for at least 2 years. That's important because it shows that at least with BDO, being a foreigner doesn't automatically disqualify you. BDO advertises personal loans from 10,000 pesos up to 2 million, with repayment periods of 6, 12, 18, 24, or 36 months. But what about interest? BDO's published personal loan schedule shows add-on rates of around 1.25% per month for many of the available terms, with effective annual rates of around 26 to 27%. Now, here's something every borrower needs to understand. When a Philippine lender says something like 1.25% per month, don't automatically think that that means that you're paying only 15% per year. That's because the add-on rate is calculated differently from conventional declining balance interest rates. So always look at the actual amortization and the effective annual rate, not just the attractive-looking monthly percentage. Another interesting possibility is Union Bank. Union Bank's current personal loan information specifically says that its eligibility includes a local resident foreigner with a valid Philippine billing address. It also lists requirements for foreign nationals, including a passport or ACR card and documentation proving local residency. A foreigner's residency documentation can include an ICR, a sufficiently valid ACR card, certain visas or work permits, an SRIV or an SRRV. That makes Union Bank particularly interesting for foreign retirees and long-term residents. Union Bank currently advertises an estimated annual contractual rate of 26.9%, although the actual rate and approval depend upon the individual application. However, here's where things can get complicated. You can't simply assume that because one major Philippine bank accepts foreign residents, every bank will. For example, BPI's current personal loan FAQ says its personal loan is currently available only to Filipino citizens residing in the Philippines. It even specifically addresses foreigners married to Filipinos and says the product is currently only available to Filipino citizens. So being married to a Filipina doesn't automatically solve the problem. If you're a foreigner, even if you're married to a Filipino citizen, a particular bank's product may still not be available to you. And the opposite is also true. A foreigner who is not married to a Filipina may still qualify with a lender that accepts resident foreigners. So what about Security Bank? Its current standard personal loan eligibility requirements say that the borrower must be a Filipino citizen. So this is another example of a major bank where a foreign resident shouldn't assume that simply having Philippine residency is going to be enough. Metrobank is another example. Its current personal loan qualifications require that the applicant be a Filipino citizen. C.I.M.B. Bank Philippines also currently requires applicants for its personal loans to be Philippine citizens. So you can already see the pattern. The Philippine lending industry doesn't have one universal rule that says foreigners can borrow or that foreigners cannot borrow. It all depends on the institution and the specific loan product. Now let's talk about H.S.B.C. Philippines, because its rules demonstrate why foreigners need to ask questions directly. Look at this chair, it's coming apart. I might have to get a bank loan, get a new chair. HSBC's current information lists personal loans with terms up to 12, 24, 36, 48, or 60 months, with loans ranging from 30,000 pesos up to 500,000, subject to credit evaluation. HSBC also published requirements specifically addressing foreign nationals, including proof of valid resident visa or other qualifying visa and residency requirements. Its published documentation says that 1 year of residency is required for foreign nationals applying for personal loans. So HSBC may be worth investigating for a qualifying long-term foreign residence, but you should verify the current eligibility rules and rates directly before applying. Now let's move away from banks. There are also finance companies, lending companies, and online lending platforms in the Philippines. These can sometimes be easier to qualify for, but there's a major trade-off. The interest rates and fees can be considerably higher, and the accounts available may be smaller. As if the 27% that the banks are charging wasn't enough. I'm sitting on that broken chair. So this is where I would tell a foreigner to be extremely careful. The Philippine SEC warned in 2026 about online lending platforms that were not recorded with the commission. The SEC specifically advised borrowers to verify the registration status of an online lending platform before applying. In other words, don't download some random loan app just because the advertisement says, get 100,000 pesos instantly. Check who actually owns the company, whether it's properly authorized, what the disclosure statement says, the total repayment amount, the penalties, and what happens if you're late. Now, what if you only want to borrow something relatively small, say 50,000 pesos. That's actually a much more realistic request for many lenders than asking for 2 million pesos. For example, Security Bank publishes a sample showing that a 50,000 peso loan payable over 36 months could have a monthly payment of approximately 2,333 pesos at its stated 37.53%. But remember, Security Bank's published standard personal loan requires Filipino citizenship. So that example demonstrates the economics of the loan, not that the foreigner would qualify for it, nor would he want to, not at 37%. Now, I'm not willing to pay that kind of interest, and I'm not going to tell anybody else what they should or shouldn't do. But what does the foreigner need to have the best chance at getting a loan? First, Philippine residency. Second, a valid passport and appropriate residency documentation, often an ACR card and qualifying visa documentation. Third, verifiable income. If you're retired and receiving Social Security, pension income, or other regular income, bring documentation showing exactly where that money comes from. Fourth, Philippine bank statements can help establish a financial history in the country. Fifth, your Philippine credit history matters. And sixth, the lender wants to see that you have some continuing connection to the Philippines. That's one reason a long-term resident can potentially have an easier conversation with a bank than a foreigner who arrived 2 months ago on a tourist visa. Now, here's probably the most important point of this video. Don't assume that you need a Filipino wife to get a loan. You don't. A foreigner can potentially obtain financing in the Philippines without being married to a Filipino citizen. But the number of lenders willing to do it is smaller and the requirements can be substantially stricter. If you're a foreign retiree with a stable income, a qualifying residency visa, a Philippine bank account, good credit, and long history of living in the country, you have a much stronger case than someone who is simply visiting the Philippines and wants a quick, unsecured loan. And if you don't qualify for an unsecured personal loan, you may have other possibilities, including secured lending where you provide acceptable collateral. The bottom line is this: being unmarried to a Filipina does not automatically prevent a foreigner from borrowing money in the Philippines. But don't walk into a bank expecting the same treatment a Filipino citizen receives. Your residency status matters. Your documentation matters. Your income matters. Your credit history matters. And the particular bank's policies matter. So before you apply, call the bank and tell them this: I'm a foreign national. I'm a legal resident in the Philippines. I'm not married to a Filipino citizen, and I have documented income. Then ask one very specific question. Do you currently offer personal loan products to someone in my situation? That one question could save you a lot of time. And most importantly, compare the effective annual rate, total repayment, processing fees, and penalties, not just the monthly interest number advertised on the poster. Because when you're borrowing money in the Philippines, the question isn't simply, can I get the loan? The better question is, how much is this loan actually going to cost me before I sign the paperwork? Well, that's going to wrap up this video. Thanks for watching. God bless. Peace out. I'll catch you in the next video.